Yo, what's going on? Music ain't stopping. Let me make sure I got my sound right because I think I have it. That should be better. I think that's right. So let me see. Did my sound play? Did my round of applause blah, blah, blah. Did my round of applause play? Can you hear me? That's better. That's what it was. Your boy had the microphone too far from his mouth. But let's check to make sure that round of applause came out clear. There we go. We good. We good. Yeah, what is going on? Happy Friday. 2 days away from what is it? Two days away, or two of the last days of good old Black History Month. Can I get a womp womp? Can we? Yeah, 2 days away. That's it. We got 2 more days of the shortest month of the year, called Black History Month. And if you celebrate Black History Month, shame on you, because the other 11 months are also Black History Month. So just don't let them give you one, and the shortest one at that. I mean, come on now, have some damn self-respect about yourself. Jesus, sheesh. It's Black History Month, the shortest month of the year. They gave it to us. No, dumbass. Every month is Black History Month. It depends on what you study. Fool, don't be no dummy. However, hopefully you're having a good day. And if you're not having a good day, we're going to let Mr. Child break it down to you. Here we go.
Oh, you're having a bad day? Did you die?
I got shot.
But did you die?
And as long as you didn't get shot, as long as you're good and here to go and ready to make something happen with your life and be a good and a model human being, a model man to society or to yourself or to those around you that you love, and ready to spread love and do something great for yourself in the future and pass down the greatness of your lineage to your bloodline and more to come, and have future kids 10 or 15 more down the line with like a surrogate woman or, you know, something of that nature, so you don't have to go through any of the bullshit that the courts bring, then hey, give yourself a round of applause. I know. But yeah, man, it is Friday, 2 days away from, ending of Black History Month. But tomorrow is your boy's birthday. Hello. Yes, sir. Tomorrow is your boy's birthday. And your boy just put out a workout video. It's been a minute since I've had a workout video posted because I have been doing so much stuff. I haven't been able to get them posted. I had a couple issues I ran into. Your boy ran into some hiccups. So with that being said, let me give you a quick note of today's sponsor. Where's today's sponsor at? Let me see. Let's see if I could do this right real quick. Let's see. Let me see if I can show y'all an image of today's sponsor. Hold on, give me 2 seconds. Let me get this posted so it don't mess up on my screen. All right, there we go. We got to put up. All right. Now, where's my thing at? Where's my thing at? There. Is this it? There it is. Why did it go over there? Oh my goodness. All my stuff is messing up. What the hell is this? I'm tripping. Okay, anyway. We're going to give you today's sponsor of today's show. Before we do, oh, that's why I have 2 of them up. I shouldn't be having 2. I should have 1. Drum roll, please. Today's sponsor of today's show is... Yes, sir, ladies and gentlemen, DnL&x Fitness with today's sponsor of today's show. Yes. Yes, sir. Today's sponsor of today's show is yours truly, your boy DnL&x Fitness. I did this video earlier this week. As you can see, I have a hiccup over here that your boy screwed up on trying to put the video together because I had to resize the video. So even though this is my first full video that I did on my own and did the editing, you're going to notice one little hiccup. I was going to go back and refix it, but I was like, you know what? You know how I feel about trying to resize that right now. Check this out.
FYM. Fuck y'all motherfuckers, you know?
I mean, the countdown is still there. The workout is still there. But the good news is that I went ahead and got it done. We got it posted. So we got one up this week. And next week, we got another one coming to you because it's damn near done. Just got a couple more things to touch up on it. We'll have another one on it ready for you on Monday for a new workout video. So we're going to be knocking these up every single week. So yes, sir. Thank y'all for checking that out. So go ahead and check it out. Yes. Yes, sir. And shout out to Jax. Shout out to little old Jax Max right there. Little old Jax. Shout out to Jax. You know what I'm saying? Jax the Yorkie. But yes, that is your boy's YouTube channel on the video section. So when you need some workouts to do at home and you want to get your body and stuff right, go and check out the video tab. We just dropped a video uploaded this week. What day did I say? Monday? I think we uploaded Monday or Sunday. So go ahead and check that out. Get your abs right. Abs are built in the kitchen, by the way. But hey, you also need to work them out and strengthen them to make them get stronger and better. So yes, sir. That is it for today's sponsor of the show. And today's show, before we get to that, we are simultaneously streaming on YouTube, Twitch, Kick, and Rumble. If you're on YouTube, do me a favor. When you see that thumbs up button pop up on your screen, hit that like button. It's greatly appreciated. If you're on Twitch, Kick, and Rumble, then give your boy a follow. Or give me a follow on all of them. Or give me a thumbs down. Or drop a hate in a comment. Or talk some shit. I don't know. Don't care. Don't really matter. Because if your comment's shitty, I'm not gonna read it. If your comment's good, I might read it. You know what I mean? I do kind of graze through the comments and read some, comment to some. Even the bad ones, I'll probably give you a thumbs up and a heart emoji or something like that on your bad comments. So do as you please, you know. Talk shit, swallow spit, do whatever you please. It don't bother me none. However, today's show is kind of a random show. All right, this show is very random because today's show is, I was doing some studying this morning. Hold on, turn that down. I was doing some random studying this morning. I was reading up on some stuff and having to come across a interesting topic, some stuff that I've never even heard of till this morning, like literally this morning. I was researching some stuff and I had came across what I was researching, and when I was looking into the history of what was I looking into? I was wondering why the West Indies is called the West Indies. That's where it started. I had a thought in my head and I was like, why the hell is the West Indies called the West Indies? Like, where did that even come from? Because when you look at the location of the West Indies, it's not generally, I mean, it's not like west of like India, sort of say. It's not like, I mean, it's west of India, but it's not west of India. You know what I mean? So I was like, West Indies, maybe the West Indian Ocean? Maybe? I was just trying to figure it out. And I was like, what the hell? Why is it called that? So I went down this rabbit hole, started typing stuff up. And when I looked into it, the first thing let me show you the first thing I found. First thing I found was actually quite frustrating. I was really upset when I found out that what the reason why it was called the West Indies. Let me see. Why is it called the West? There we go. That's what I had right there. And the first answer that I got, it was pretty dissatisfying, to say the least. I was dissatisfied with the answer. And this is the answer that I got. I'm going to show you the answer that I got and why I ended up where I ended up. But let me show you. Let me pull this up on the screen. Where we at? Right here. West Indies. I got this answer. When I got this answer, I was like highly pissed. I was like, this is so stupid ass dude. It says right here, the name West Indies originated from Christopher Columbus' mistaken belief in 1492. Now, before I go any further, Christopher Columbus clearly was just a mistake at heart, because clearly he didn't discover America. Clearly he made him, anyway. The West Indies originated from Christopher Columbus' mistaken belief in 1492 that he had reached the Indies, South and Southeast Asia, by sailing west from Europe. This geographical misnomer was then used to distinguish this new Indies from the actual East Indies. So when I found that out, I was like, okay, so all this came from this retard's mistaken belief. So clearly Christopher Columbus was a dumbass, to say the least, a evil dumbass, to say the least, like extremely evil, like a very evil dude. If you even read some of the stuff from Christopher Columbus where I don't know who said he discovered America. I do have to give him that. I don't know who said he discovered America, because in his documents, in like his actual writing, or if you're like his journal or something, because he was journaling, he actually like noted that there was people on the island. So he technically didn't say, maybe he did, but I don't know. But in his document, he didn't notate, he didn't like say that there were people on the islands that he went to. So which in turn lets you know he didn't discover America. I mean, he just found some land, potentially, whether it was America or the Caribbean islands, whatever the case was. And he, explained who the people were and how they looked. And, they were very melanated people. They had gold and jewelry and everything. He said they were very nice. They were very friendly people. They would give you the shirt off their back. They were so nice. And he described them as like very like warm, loving people. He was like, these people are really good and nice. And then this nigga goes in to say that, you know what? Because of their gratitude and greatness, they would make really good slaves. And I guess the rest is history. Because clearly he wasn't lying about that. Bro went in and got pictures of him with people's arms and feet and legs chopped off in agony. He's over here planting the flag with the Captain Morgan stance and stuff like that. I'm just like, bruh, I hope there's a nice warm place in hell for you for all this craziness you're doing. Bruh. But then again, we don't know who the pictures actually were. Because, you know, you go down history, you'll find a melanated black version of Christopher Columbus. Then you got a whitewash or maybe even a white version of Christopher Columbus, and then they say that he was here. Or at some point, it gets kind of confusing because you start to like realize like who is who and were these people really here, and does this picture really tell the story of this island? But from what we have, Christopher Columbus has, you know, the picture of him, you know, landing on whatever island that he's on, and then you see people in the background with their arms and their feet cut off and stuff like that in agony and pain. As a matter of fact, maybe I could find that picture for you. Let's see. Let me see if I can find that image for you, because it's actually pretty interesting, because it's like really brutal. Let's see. Christopher Columbus image of, what is it? His image of him landing on the, I guess we could say West Indies. Let me see if I can find it. Where is the image where he's like landed on the island, but like there's people in the background like with the arms and legs and stuff chopped off, and he's just sitting there like, I found land. Where is this at? Let me see if I can find it for you real quick. Let me see. They probably don't have it up here anymore. Well, they probably took it down because they don't want him to have a bad image of himself. Although, you know, buddy ain't got the best reputation, but, you know, to each his own. To each his own. Let me see. Let's see if I can find it. I don't want to take too much time wasting on this stuff because I don't want to give him too much shine. What do we have here? That's actually a pretty cool image, but that's not the one I'm looking for, but that's actually a cool image. Let's see. Landing. Is it this one? No, it's not that one. Let's see. I'm gonna give it a couple more seconds and then I'm gonna move on if I don't find it. Is this it right here? Let's see. Is that it? No, it's not it right there. No, I don't think I can find it. But I don't want to sit here and make myself seem like I'm telling like fictitious stories, because I'm not. Because I've seen it. I know it exists. But you know, Google be trying not to, you know, let you have everything. 8 myths and atrocities about Christopher Columbus on Columbus Day. I could go down that rabbit hole, but we ain't gonna do that right now because it gets pretty brutal. It gets pretty brutal. But anyway, Christopher Columbus, we all know he wasn't the greatest guy of any morale or anything like that. However, the reason why I'm talking about him, let's just get to the point. I was looking up the West Indies and I found out what the West Indies were, and then I had to figure out where exactly where the West Indies came from. Then I came across the British Indies, the French Indies, and the Danish Indies. I was like, oh, the Danish Indies. That sounds rather interesting. So I came up on the Danish Indies. And when I looked into the Danish Indies, I actually found, you know, some places by where the Danish had ruled from, which would happen to be a few islands that they did come across, which were these right here. Zoom in. So right here, when I went and found what I was looking for, it was the Danish Virgin Islands. I was like, oh, I know those places. St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John. So I was like, all right, cool. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to figure out why those are called what it is. So we found the Danish West Indies. So as I go down, I find out that it's also known as the Danish West Indies. And then it shows that the Danish colonies in the Caribbean consisted of islands St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. So St. Croix, I believe, is being the biggest one out of all, St. John being the smallest. Water was sold in 1905 to Danish East Asiatic Company. The islands St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix were purchased by the U.S. in 1917 and became known as the United States Virgin Islands. Water Island, bought by the U.S. government in 1944, became part of U.S. Virgin Islands in 1996. All right, cool. So there we have that. So then as I'm sitting here looking at this, I was just reading this whole thing. I mean, I just went on like this like deep plunge. So I started reading that whole thing. So I get to the religion sector as I'm reading, and this is what got me. This is the part that got me. All right, let me show you. So this is where I got highly intrigued. I was like, all right, so anyway, religion. Now, you know, religion is a very, very interesting topic because you always try to figure out like who's right and who's wrong when it comes to this religious thing. And I'll read it to you right here. We'll go from the top and then we'll stop where we need to stop. And it goes right here. It says the Danish West Indies was inhabited by many different cultures. Each had its own traditions and religions. The church overlooked people's moral upbringing. Or excuse me, the church looked after people's moral upbringing, and the king was responsible for civil order. This says the freedom of religion was partially granted to the colonies to help settle the islands. As there was shortage of willing settlers from Europe, this resulted in a large proportion being Dutch and British natives fleeing religious persecution. Okay, interesting. Fleeing religious persecutions. Huh. Then the Jews began settling in the colony in 1966, and by 1796, the first synagogue was inaugurated. Bruh. In its heyday, in the mid-19th century, the Jewish community made up half of the European population, and one of the earliest colonial governors, Gabriel Milan, was a Sephardic Jew. I think I said that right. In spite of a general tolerance of faith, here we go, many African religions were not recognized because they typically revolved around belief in animism. Animism. It's going to be hard for me to say this word. Animism and magic. So a lot of African religions were not recognized because they revolved around a belief in animism and magic. Beliefs that were consistently met with scorn and were regarded as immoral and inferior. It was widely believed that if slaves could be converted to Christianity, they could have a better life, and the effort was made to do so. It was at that very moment that your boy went down a rabbit hole, because I was like, wait a minute. So they even said it. They said it see this is the type of shit I be talking about. It says right here, freedom of religion was partially granted to the colonies to help settle the islands, as there was a shortage of willing settlers from Europe, and that this resulted in a large proportion being Dutch and British natives fleeing religious persecutions. Then we come down here, after the Jews and everything get it set up, it says, in spite of a general tolerance of faiths, many African religions were not recognized, meaning Africans had their religion. It just wasn't Christianity, or probably Islam. And it said that they were not recognized because they revolved around beliefs in animism and magic. Beliefs that were consistently met with scorn and were regarded as immoral and inferior. Okay, so who is to say what is moral and immoral when it comes to religion? Especially if because you don't recognize their religion because the belief is in animism and magic. Again, we're going to figure out what animism is here in a minute. And it was widely believed that if slaves could be converted to Christianity, they would have a better life. And they made an effort to do so. So clearly what they're saying is their slaves had a religion that revolved around a belief in animism and magic. And it was met with scorn, and it was looked at as or regarded as immoral and inferior. So then they were like, we got to get these motherfuckers off this animism magic shit. Because clearly, I mean, if you look at the slave revolts that they had, I mean, they was kicking ass. You know what I mean? Like, call a spade, but a lot of slave revolts happen. And you want to think back as to why. Well, I mean, hey, they had their own belief system. So that tells you that there was something prior to Christianity being pushed on the slaves. The slaves had their own thing. So now, I guess it's only right that we have to tackle what this is. So we go here and we look up what is animism. Animism, let me slide in so you can see it. Let me slide in. There we go. So we go into animism, and it says from Latin, anima, meaning breath, spirit, life. Sounds pretty good to me. It's the belief that places, objects, and creatures all possess a distinct spiritual essence. Animism perceives all things, animals, plants, rocks, rivers, weather systems, human handiwork, and in some cases, words as being animated, having agency and free will. Animism is used in an anthropology of religion as a term for the belief system of many in indigenous peoples. In contrast to the relatively more recent development of organized religions, animism is a metaphysical belief which focuses on the supernatural universe, specifically on the concept of the immaterial soul. Now, this is what got me as well. It was a belief system that it perceived all things to have animated, having agency and free will, which I thought was rather interesting. They looked at everything as being animated and having agency and free will. And even more, it says that it's used in anthropology of religion as a term for the belief system of many indigenous peoples. So a lot of indigenous people were using animism, but it seems like animism was the religion of the slaves before. Can we go back right here? Animism was the religion of the slaves before they were converted to Christianity to have a better life. So I was like, animism. This is interesting. So now I'm like, okay, well, I got to figure out what this is, because now we have a rabbit hole to go down. Because I'm like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here? So, you know me, once again, once I see what this is, I'm like, all right, we have to figure this out, because why is it that they are so hell-bent on blocking what animism is if they were allegedly going to have a good life against the life they were already having? Because if the slaves' religion was animism, but you converted them to Christianity to tell them that they would have a better life, and then they converted to Christianity, okay, who gave them the better life? It clearly wasn't the God or deity that they were already praising. It was you that was giving them the better life, not God. So therefore, the God that you were converting them to would be you, and not actually God, the creator of all things. You know what I mean? Just thinking outside the box, trying to figure this shit out. So then I also went into African traditional religions, because I was like, okay, how far back does this go? Because it's saying that the slaves in the Danish colonies, or not the Danish colonies, but the slaves at that time, from way back in like 1700s or whatever, at the time they were practicing African religions that were not typically, recognized, because they revolved around animism and magic. So let's look at that. Let's get an understanding of the African religions and their practices. So I went in, typed this in, or not typed this in, but found African religion and traditions. And it says the belief and practices of African people are highly diverse, includes various ethnic religions. Generally, these traditions are oral rather than scriptural, and are passed down from one generation to another through narratives, songs, myths, and festivals. They include beliefs in spirits and higher and lower gods, sometimes including a supreme being, as well as the veneration of the dead, use of magic, and traditional African medicine. Most religions can be described as animistic. There we go again. With various polytheistic and pantheistic aspects. The role of humanity is generally seen as one of harmonizing nature with the supernatural. That right there, the role of humanity is generally seen as harmonizing nature with the supernatural. I think that's actually a very beautiful thing. Like, look at that. The role of humanity is generally seen as one of harmonizing nature with the supernatural. I'm like, okay, that sounds pretty intriguing. I'm going to have to dive down this rabbit hole to see what this is really about. Then we go down a little bit. I'm not going to go too deep into this. Adherents of traditional religions in Africa are distributed among 43 countries and are now estimated to a number of over 100 million. Islam and Christianity, having largely displaced indigenous African religions, are often adapted to African culture contexts and belief systems. African people combine the practice of their traditional belief with the practice of Abrahamic religions. So, meaning probably what happened. These two Abrahamic religions are widespread across Africa and in different regions. We'll finish this. Abrahamic religion's belief system, especially monotheistic elements such as the belief in a single created God, were introduced in traditional polytheistic African religions rather early. West African religions seek to come to terms with reality, and unlike Abrahamic religions, are not idealizations. They generally seek to explain the reality of personal experience by spiritual forces which underpin orderly group life, contrasted by those that threaten it. That sounds pretty fair. I'm just saying, that sounds pretty fair. And what I was going to say up here is it said that African people often combine the practice of their traditional beliefs with the practice of Abrahamic religions. I would say they did that because they probably got converted, and under conversion to Islam or Christianity or whatever other religion, they still covertly would practice their religion in private as opposed to out in the open, because they still want to keep their stuff. So they probably combined the two, but they did it by doing one to survive and then still doing the other one to keep their culture, to keep their religion or their tradition. So I thought that was very interesting, which is why we're going to watch a very long video about animism. And we're going to see exactly, well, I'm not saying see exactly. Somebody made a video. I thought the video was very interesting to watch, to get an understanding of how animism is, because it seems like it's a religion that predates Islam and Christianity. That's what I'm getting to the understanding of. And if this was the religion of Africans, then could we say that this is the first religion that ever was around before Islam and Christianity hit the scene? So therefore, if this is allegedly the first religion that was ever made, how and why was it buried? What was it all about? How did it work? Because according to what I just read to you, it seems like harmonizing with nature. What it says right here, the role of humanity is generally seen as one of harmonizing nature with the supernatural. Basically, they were at one with the land. They were at one with nature, trees and grass and animals and birds and sun and moon and stars. They believed in the reality of their eyes, and they were like, okay, like the hills, the mountain, the grass is green, or if the grass is dying over here, the seasons change. Like, they accepted nature. They were in harmony with nature. So there's like, okay, cool. We can't fight nature. So it seems like they went with it. They understood like nature has its spring, summer, winter, fall. Or did I say spring, summer, fall, winter phases, and understanding crops and animals and how things all tie together and work together. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to dive in deeper and get a better understanding as to what this is. So we're going to watch this video. This video is really long. I'm going to interject it probably quite a bit just so they won't give me a copyright strike. But we're going to see exactly what animism is to get a good, deep understanding. So with that being said, let's go ahead and tap into this video. And it says that animism, the oldest religion before the Bible and Quran. And this is by History Store, so shout out to them if you want to go watch the video, but we're going to do it right here live. So let's go ahead and tap into this video to get a good understanding as to how this stuff works, because I've never heard of this before. Never heard of it. So it's very intriguing to come across this and to get a good understanding as to see what religion could have been out there prior to Christianity and the Quran. And on top of that, to find out that the slaves were using this religion, and the people who were Christians at the time, they didn't really care for it. They looked at it as immoral and inferior because they were using magic and animism and not their shit. And they felt like it was better to get them away from their shit and put them under their Christianity. So it's interesting to know that that's what the slaves, or some of the slaves, or whatever the situation was, they already had their own stuff. I just never knew what it was. And now I've found it, and I want to dive into it, and I felt it would be a very good idea to share it with you as well because, you know, research purposes, Black History Month, you know what I mean? Yeah. Hey, this is some real Black History Month shit for your ass. Like ain't nobody doing it like your boy. Ain't nobody doing it like your boy. You want to talk about Black History Month? We finna see some Black History Month right here, bro. We finna go back, way back in the time. Yeah, we gonna go all the way down. So let's go ahead and check this out. Let me stop talking. So here we go. Here's the video. Animism, the oldest religion before the Bible and Quran. Here we go.
We honor the spirits of the old ways.
May the ancestors guide us.
Before the Bible, before the Quran, there was animism, the belief that life flows through rivers.
Before we go on, just real quick. If I walked through a forest and I saw this, you know, the glowing deer, the glowing wolf, the trees have mouth and eyes, and the vibrant skies and the faces and of maybe the ancestors or whoever's up here and the glowing birds, I ain't gonna lie, I'd be happy as hell. I'd be like, this shit is live. What is this? You know what I mean? Because remember, they said that animism is animated. Remember when I read that to you? It said animism is animated, and also, let me find it for you real fast. Sorry, I know y'all probably mad at me. It says right here that animism, real quick, before we go further, let me just find it for you real fast. Right here. It is animated, having agency and free will. And it says animals perceive, it says that animism perceives all things: animal, plants, rocks, rivers, weather systems, human handiwork, in some cases words, as being animated, having agency and free will. So there's that. So anyway, let's get back into the video and let's continue. I won't interrupt that much.
Quran. There was animism, the belief that life flows through rivers, whispers through trees, moves in animals, and speaks through ancestors. It is the oldest spiritual system in human history. It didn't come with books, prophets, or temples made of stone. It came through experience, through relationship, through reverence. Animism wasn't just a belief, it was a way of seeing, a sacred understanding that the world was alive and that nothing was separate. For tens of thousands of years, this worldview shaped how humanity lived, worshipped, and related to the earth. From Africa to Asia, the Americas to Europe, people honored the land they walked, the ancestors who guided them, and the spirits that moved through all living things. But what?
You know, it's beautiful that they showing all cultures. As we look, they're showing all cultures, all different cultures, African cultures, Asian cultures, Western cultures with the Indians, and everybody of the cultures all worshiping, or not even say worshiping, but all, I guess you could say praising or living harmoniously and understanding nature. As you go back and look at it, like in the forest, everybody's got their own cultural garms. You know what I mean? Everything is not the same. You know what I mean? Which is really nice and beautiful. And looking at the trees and all this stuff, it's really nice that everybody respected nature with this religion that they're talking about. But let's keep going.
To Asia, worshipped and related to the earth. From Africa to Asia, the Americas to Europe, people honored the land they walked, the ancestors who guided them, and the spirits that moved through all living things. But what happened when Christianity and Islam, the world's two most powerful religions, collided with it? What happened when one God, one book, and one truth met a world that believed in many spirits, many paths, and sacred balance? Across continents and centuries, the rise of these monotheistic religions reshaped the spiritual map of the world. Shrines.
Hey, that is a very beautiful image. On this side, you got Christianity and Islam with, you know, the heavenly sky with God up here. Over here, you got animism, which is, like they said, animated and having the, what is it? animated and everything had its own, you know, spirit or whatnot, as you see with everything. This is interesting. This is hella interesting.
Rise of these monotheistic religions reshaped the spiritual map of the world. Shrines were burned, drums were silenced, ancestral wisdom was pushed underground. And yet, somehow, animism didn't vanish. It adapted. It survived in secret. It hid inside saints, rituals, and songs. It waited quietly beneath the noise. Today, the world is spiritually hungry again. People are searching for meaning beyond.
They said here, so they burned their shrines and built their churches on top of what they burned down, which I don't find that hard to believe. And that makes a hell of a lot of sense, especially for a group of people that you potentially enslaved. Or like the movie, I think that if I have this right, Dances with Wolves, where they had that part where they killed all the buffalo on the land and the Indians came out and they look and they saw as far as the eyes could see was all the buffalo was skinned and just left there. You know, they just took the skin with all flesh hanging out. This starts to make sense when you start to like go through history of movies and things you can think about. This actually has a very good understanding to it.
Today, the world is spiritually hungry again. People are searching for meaning beyond dogma, truth beyond fear, connection beyond doctrine. And that brings us back to a simple, powerful question. Is animism still alive? Or was it erased? If you feel the pull of something older, if you believe the old spirits never died, like and comment below. Because this is more than a history lesson. It's a remembering, and it starts now.
Look at this. So you got Christianity right here, Islam flags up here, but they're burning down animism with the tribe or the people of the culture or religion of animism coming out to, it looks like they're trying to fight or going to go to war, but they're burning down their shrines and stuff like that, or their villages as well.
Animism is not a religion in the way many people understand it today. It has no founders, no centralized scriptures, no hierarchy of power. It is, at its root, a worldview, one of the oldest and most widespread the human race has ever known. At its core is a single, profound truth. Everything is alive. The trees are not just wood, the rivers not just water, the animals not just beasts of burden or food sources. In an animist understanding, every element of the natural world carries spirit and consciousness, intention, wisdom. Stones remember, winds speak, mountains hold secrets. The world is not inert. It is sacred, sentient, and interconnected.
Okay, that holds a lot of weight because you can tie that into like sound and vibration and frequency. You've ever seen the thing where somebody will put like sand or grain on a table and then they'll play a frequency, a sound, and it'll take a shape, and they play a different sound or frequency. It'll do a different shape and another sound or frequency and do a different shape. So it's like they're tying in sound and frequency and vibrations all into understanding that everything around them plays a role. You know, the tree is here for a reason. It provides oxygen and maybe wood if they used it, or it has a purpose. Then the water has a purpose. The everything they appreciated. It seems like they appreciated nature. They follow the laws of nature. That's what it seems like to me. From what I'm getting from this, it seems like they appreciated nature and followed the beauty of nature. And I mean, you would be extremely harmonious and probably in love with the beauty of the surroundings that you have if you see stuff like this, like a beautiful mountain landscape, elephant over your shoulder, everybody chilling, like you're good. Like, what else do you need? You just take one day at a time and appreciate this thing called life, from the beginning to the ending of it, and you don't take it for granted. You show gratitude towards it day by day through the ups and downs and smiles and frowns. This is what I'm getting from it, at least. Let's go.
Inert. It is sacred, sentient, and interconnected. To the animist, life does not begin and end with the human. The earth itself is alive. The animals are kin. the sky watches, and the ancestors never leave. They walk beside the living, whispering through dreams, guiding through signs, blessing or warning, depending on the path one chooses.
If you see him here, if you, I don't, you, right up here, because they talking about the ancestors, it seems like, you know, like this could be his ancestors still guiding him through life. Because, you know, having elders and having grandparents, you know, you always want to talk to them, great uncles, uncles, whatever you got that are older than you. You always want to use their wealth of knowledge in their head, because they say when an old person dies, a library dies with them, a wealth of knowledge and history. So from what they're saying, they still deal with the ancestors, and they still are allowed to use them and communicate with them to help guide them and keep them going through life, which is, I think that's a good thing, because you still are connected with your loved ones. They never go away. So it kind of gives you a sense of understanding that after you die, they're still there. You may see them in your dreams every once in a while, but they're still there. There's something still there to guide you and help you and let you know along the way of this thing called life. So you're still connected, not just in the physical, but in the spiritual as well. And that connection remains with you the entire time. I like this so far. So far, so good. It's interesting.
Animism teaches that everything exists in relationship, and that relationship demands respect. Rituals are not performed out of fear of divine wrath, but out of love, gratitude, and the desire to stay in harmony with the seen and unseen worlds. Modern society often labels animism as primitive, a relic of our uncivilized past. But in truth, animism is deeply philosophical. It asks questions about identity, consciousness, death, and the meaning of existence.
And as we see, it doesn't matter who they put up. You can tell he's Asian. The other person was, you know, Native American, or I guess what we would say Indian. Like of all cultures and all walks of life across all continents, we're seeing different people on each continent having a relationship with nature, which is a harmonious understanding, which to me, in a sense, which would be a global understanding and respect for life itself. And, you know, if people came across each other, traveling from different lands or across the water, having that respect with nature, you know, I think trade would be a beneficial thing, because you know that what I got from my side of what I got here in North America and what you brought from South America, you know, I respect what you have and you respect what I have, because only I can get what I got where I'm at, and only you can get what you got where you're at. And we're going to accept each other and respect each other and trade off of it, because we also respect the nature of how and why we got these things. So it would be, to me, it would seem like less reasons for fighting and war, but, you know, humans are going to be humans.
It does not separate science from spirit or fact from feeling. It recognizes that intelligence isn't limited to human logic. It flows through the land, the wind, the dreams of children, and the silence of elders. To live animistically is to live in a state of reverent awareness where nothing is taken for granted and nothing is truly separate. It is a worldview of presence, of participation, of profound humility. This way of seeing was not localized to one tribe or continent, it was global. In West Africa, the Yoruba people recognized the Orishas, divine forces that governed nature and human behavior. Oshun flowed through rivers with sweetness and seduction. Shango rumbled in the thunder with justice and fire. These weren't abstract deities, they were aspects of the living world, personalities of the cosmos, woven into daily life through dance, prayer, and offering. Each person was born with an Ori, a personal spiritual destiny, to be honored and aligned with through rituals and choices. Among the Igbo of Nigeria, the concept of chi held a similar place. Your chi was your inner spark, a spiritual double, a guardian, a mirror of your highest self. It was not something you prayed to for favors, it was something you listened to for guidance. To be in alignment with your chi was to be in alignment with truth, justice, and cosmic law. This wasn't about fear of sin, It was about harmony with your purpose. In ancient Egypt or Kemet, the idea of Ka described the vital life force that animated the body and continued after death. Ka was not just breath, it was the essence of individuality, the soul's energy, and its connection to divine order. The Egyptian worldview was steeped in animism, despite later theological evolutions. Temples were energetic centers, rituals aligned the soul with the cosmos, and nature was imbued with cosmic law, Ma'at, the principle of truth, balance, and harmony. Even the great Nile was seen as a sacred being, not just a river.
Okay, hold on. Sorry. They hit us with an ad so quick. That was crazy. So they didn't look at the Nile as just a river. They looked at the Nile as something, something to respect, something to honor. So you just wouldn't do anything atrocious to nature. You respected nature and you utilize nature if needed. So therefore, it wouldn't be too much room for, I guess you could say, you couldn't be gluttonous, you know what I mean? Because when you ate, I would say your eating came from a respected purpose as opposed to, out of just sheer satisfying of your hunger urges. I think the respecting of everything around you is the respecting of everything around you and them saying it was a global way of living. I mean, that seems like a way that we need to get back to, but they said that Christianity and Islam came in, so we're going to see if they dive deeper into that and see how that plays a role in it, which I can kind of already predict how that's going to go, but let's just keep going.
Nile was seen as a sacred being, not just a river. In Japan, Shinto tradition speaks of the kami, spiritual presences that dwell in everything from trees to mountains to ancestors. There are no strict doctrines or commandments. Instead, there is reverence for the seasons, the cycles, the spaces where spirit and form meet. Kami are not distant gods, they are near. They are in the cherry blossoms, the stones in the garden, the breath before a bow. Rituals in Shinto are not acts of submission, they are gestures of honor. Native American traditions also pulse with animistic wisdom. The Great Spirit is not a singular male deity in the sky, but a unifying presence that lives in all things. Animal totems are not mascots. They are spiritual kin. Ceremonies like the sun dance, the vision quest, and the ghost dance were rooted in the belief that life is sacred, that the ancestors walk with the living, and that balance must be maintained between humanity and the land.
Life is sacred. The ancestors work with the living. That is a bar right there. Let them say that again. Life is sacred, and the ancestors worked with the living. So everything around you was greatly appreciated and understood. And even when someone passed away physically, you knew and believed that you would still see them in like dreams, or knew that they were still guiding you. And the guiding principle would be all around you because everything was in harmony with each other. This is actually pretty interesting. And this would be the religion of what they said the slaves were prior to, some of the African slaves were prior to being converted to Christianity.
The sun dance, the vision quest, and the ghost dance were rooted in the belief that life is sacred, that the ancestors walk with the living, and that balance must be maintained between humanity and the land. When a hunter killed, they offered tobacco and prayer. When a child was born, the tribe sang to the stars and to the bones of those who came before. In the ancient Celtic world, animism was rooted in the forests. Sacred groves were natural temples. Certain trees were considered elder beings, holders of memory and power.
This is like understanding Avatar a hell of a lot better. Like the movie with the blue people, Avatar. This gives a good understanding to Avatar. It gives me like the understanding of Avatar, the movie with the blue people, and the Nickelodeon series with Aang. If you watch that one with the arrow, the cartoon version, this gives a perfect understanding of that. And he looked like a Lord of the Rings character.
The oak, the yew, the ash, each held its own spirit. Druids, the spiritual leaders of the Celts, were not simply priests. They were mediators between the human world and the world of spirit. They understood that the land was alive, that mist could be a message, and that the divine was closer than breath. All these examples, scattered across time and geography, point to one truth: Animism was not a local superstition. It was a global spiritual intelligence, a recognition that life is more than survival, that the world is more than a resource, that the divine is not only found in the heavens, but also in the dirt, the fire, the blood, and the breath.
He said life is more than survival, and the world is more than a resource. Today, that's polar opposite. It seems like life is all about surviving, and the earth is a resource that rich are trying to gain. So we are completely polarized from this existence. And just to switch it the other way, they accepted life as a beautiful thing to not take for granted, to accept it for what it is. This is really interesting. I like this a lot. I really do.
A recognition that life is more than survival, that the world is more than a resource, that the divine is not only found in the heavens, but also in the dirt, the fire, the blood, and the breath. Animism asked not for submission, but for participation. But then came new religions. One God, one book, one truth, and they brought fire.
You take a private...
Okay, so it went from harmonious living to like, bitch, you better accept this as truth or else die. You know what I mean? That's basically what they're saying in a nutshell. I'm not using those words, but you get what I'm saying. So the harmonious living of accepting and understanding everything has a role. The dirt is for a reason. With the dirt you plant, see, everything is living. Everything around you, from what your feet touch to the touching of the trees, everything. You were in tune with nature 100%. And, you know, understanding that everything that you're in tune with, if you lay in some green grass and you're looking up at the sky, whether it's day or night, you're understanding that, you know, the grass has a story to tell because people have probably been buried there, animals have died there, but things are still harmoniously living with you. You're in tune with it. You're feeling it. You're smelling it. It's the essence. You don't have headphones or iPads or ear pads on listening to technology. You're in it. You're hearing the wind blow. You're hearing the birds chirp. You're hearing footsteps. You're hearing it all. So, yeah, then good old religion came down the pipeline, you know, and we're going to see how that came with fire. So you know what they did with that fire, bro. They went in and torched some shit.
So in the dirt, the fire, the blood, and the breath. Animism asked not for submission, but for participation.
It asked not for submission, but for participation. So the laws of nature, you can't fight it. So participate with it and enjoy the dance. It's going to be spring, summer, fall, winter. The seasons change. Understand how these things go. In this season you do this season you do that, this season you do this season you do that. Your environment is different. You might be in more of a cold place, you might be more of a tropical place, but understand how this dance goes. So you're in tune.
But then came new religions. One God, one book, one truth, and they brought fire. When Christianity expanded beyond its Middle Eastern origins into Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas, it did not arrive quietly. It came hand in hand with empires, armed with scriptures, crosses, and a sense of divine mission. What it found in many of the lands it entered were not godly savages, as missionaries would later describe, but deeply rooted animist traditions shaped by centuries of relationship with the nature, ancestors, and spirit. These belief systems were not simply displaced, they were targeted. The Christian worldview, built on the idea of one supreme God, one holy book, and one singular path to salvation, could not tolerate a cosmos filled with spirits, forests that spoke, or ancestors that guided. In its eyes, animism was not just different, it was dangerous. Missionaries...
That's because they couldn't benefit from it. They benefited from their book, but they couldn't benefit from the harmonious living. That should tell you everything you need to know. Like, they couldn't benefit from harmonious living. They couldn't benefit from harmonious living with the earth, but they can only benefit from destruction and tearing it apart. That should tell you everything you need to know. That's a hell of a statement.
Animism was not just different, it was dangerous. Missionaries, often the spiritual arm of colonization, labeled animist traditions as witchcraft, idolatry, and devil worship. To believe in tree spirits was to be deceived by demons. To offer libation to ancestors was to consort with the dead. To dance in trance was to invite possession. These acts, sacred in the original context, were reinterpreted through a biblical lens as sinful, backward, and in need of eradication. Evangelism then was not only about introducing the Christian God, it was about replacing entire spiritual ecosystems with a singular foreign truth. In many parts of Africa, the Caribbean, and the South America, colonization provided the perfect infrastructure for this spiritual takeover. European powers sent not only soldiers and traders, but priests and preachers. Shrines were razed to the ground and replaced with churches. Sacred groves, spaces where communities had worshipped for generations, were cut down, their spirits driven out by the swing of an axe and the sign of the cross. In some cases, altars to orishas or ancestors were literally built over by Christian buildings, as if to say, this God has conquered yours. The cultural violence was immense. In West Africa, converts were often required to renounce their traditional names and take on biblical ones.
He said the convert violence was immense. He said this God has conquered yours, so they would burn down their place and then put their church right on top of where their stuff was. And then how could you say that your God is better than another God when it is known that their religion was before yours and their religion was harmonious to the earth? It's crazy when you look at it. Like, I just can't. Now don't get it twisted. Just like you can have, good and bad goes on both sides. You can have something good and bad. So I'm pretty sure Animism could have had a bad side too. Just like anything else can. But if yours was here first and yours conscribed of living harmonious with the land, why would you not want to live harmonious with the land as well? Why would you want to destroy that? But then again, that tells you something.
The cultural violence was immense. In West Africa, converts were often required to renounce their traditional names and take on biblical ones, replacing ancestral identity with Christian rebirth. Dances that once honored spirits of fertility, thunder, and harvest were banned, deemed lewd or demonic. Drums, the heartbeat of ritual life, were silenced in many villages. Their rhythms, once used to call the orishas or the ancestors, were now seen as tools of pagan invocation. Whole cosmologies were flattened, rewritten, or erased. And as colonial systems expanded, the line between political obedience and religious conversion became thin, if not invisible. There are countless stories of spiritual erasure cloaked in salvation. In some regions, people were baptized with holy water while their shrines were burned behind them. Children were taught to fear their grandparents' customs. mothers were told to stop invoking the names of spirits during childbirth. In East Africa, elders who had once led community rituals were marginalized, dismissed as witch doctors by European missionaries who neither understood nor cared to understand their sacred role.
They're literally demoralizing their entire culture. That's what they're doing. That everything he's describing is demoralizing their culture to a T, and then turning around and calling it demonic, and then converting them to their religion, but also still enslaving them. This is the thing that I don't. Well, I mean, I get it, but I don't get it. I get it, but I don't get it. Right? Like whenever I was like this right here, when it tells you freedom of religion was partially granted to colonies to help settle the islands, as there was a shortage of willing settlers from Europe. This resulted in a large proportion being Dutch and British natives fleeing religious persecution. So you had freedom of religion, but then, you know, the British natives were fleeing religious persecution. So religion was always a fight. Religion is always a fight whenever you're basically either colonizing a country or island or whatever you want to call it. However, it's very clear that they had their faiths before you got there. But then you came with fire and burned their faith down and told their children to basically demonize their parents and grandparents' entire religious system that they were brought up on, just to put them under yours because you want to call it evil, even though it is the very reason, that religion is the very reason why you're able to walk on that land and do the shit that you're doing, burning and rebuilding. That came from their religious practice over all these years. Oh my goodness. Let's keep going.
Christianity presented itself not just as an alternative, but as a correction. It did not coexist with animism. It sought to replace it entirely. And yet, the story of animism under Christianity is not only one of loss, it is also one of survival. Because the spirits did not disappear. They adapted. They hid beneath the surface of the new religion, wearing new names, singing through new hymns, surviving in new forms. This blending, known as syncretism, allowed animist practices to persist even under Christian rule. In Haiti, for example, enslaved Africans continued to honor their spirits, or Lebelue, by associating them with Catholic saints. Legba, the gatekeeper of the spirit world, became associated with Saint Peter. Ezili, the spirit of love and beauty, took on the image of the Virgin Mary. What looked like saint worship to
Hey, I ain't gonna lie though. Don't this look like the image of Jesus that's described in the Bible? White woolly hair, eyes fiery red, feet burned like burnt bronze or burnt brass. Like, hey, that look like Jesus. Even they try to take him away, they still got their image from somebody. Anyway, I digress.
the colonizers was in fact a hidden dialogue with the old gods. In Brazil, candomblé emerged as a fusion of Yoruba beliefs and Catholic ritual. Ocean danced again, now inside church festivals. In Cuba, Santeria mirrored the same resilience, spirits reborn through iconography, rites carried forward in secret or in plain sight. The churches could not see what was happening beneath the surface, but the people knew. They knew that the Orisha had never left. They had simply learned new names. These syncretic faiths were not passive compromises. They were acts of resistance. They allowed people to preserve their ancestral memory while navigating the oppressive structures of colonization. In the plantation fields of the Caribbean, enslaved people sang Christian hymns while secretly invoking the spirits of their homelands. In remote villages, traditional healers continued their practices behind closed doors, even as Sunday services filled the air. The survival of animism was not accidental. It was deliberate, strategic, and courageous. Yet the tension remained. Because for many Christians, animism represented a spiritual threat. It was viewed as a temptation, an old way that needed to be forgotten for salvation to be possible.
Wow. An old way that needed to be forgotten so salvation could be possible. They looked at it as a spiritual threat. Wow. That's crazy. When you think about it like that, like just the way they're saying it. And it's like he's trying to impose his religion onto him. He's not trying to impose his religion onto him. He's like, look, you live in my religion. Regardless of what you may do with nature, you live in my religion. I don't have to impose my religion upon you. You live in it. Rain, sleet, snow, grass, trees, birds, bees. You live in my religion. I don't have to oppose it on you. It's all around you. You can't escape it if you try, because my religion is nature. Interesting.
And for many animists, Christianity was not simply a foreign religion. It was a spiritual invader, a force that not only desecrated sacred places but demanded amnesia. It wasn't enough to believe in the Christian God. One had to forget the names, songs, and spirits of their ancestors. One had to cut the root to plant the cross. This is why, even today, the tension lingers. In some African churches, congregants speak in tongues on Sunday and visit traditional healers on Monday. In parts of South America, Christian icons sit alongside spirit altars in the same home. And in many families, grandmothers whisper old prayers while grandchildren recite new ones. There is no clean break between these worlds. Only layers, only survival. The legacy of Christian conquest is complex. For some, it brought comfort, order, and community. For others, it brought fragmentation, guilt, and spiritual exile. But whatever one believes about the Christian faith, one thing is undeniable. Its expansion was often built on the ashes of animist fire. For Christians, animism was an enemy of salvation. For animists, Christianity was a threat to ancestral memory. This quote captures the heart of the conflict.
Okay, that was a bar. So, to Christianity, animism was a threat to salvation. You couldn't get salvation from Christian God. But from an animism perspective, Christianity was a threat. So this one's saying you're blocking salvation, but this one is saying you're threatening me. You know what I mean? That's basically what they're saying. This one is saying you're blocking the salvation. People need to go and get their salvation. But this one is saying, but you are threatening me. I'm not blocking anything of you because what I'm doing is regarding in nature. Again, animus, and in anything that you do, there can be a good version and a bad version. You can have good animus and bad animus. You know, some can use it for evil, some can use it for good. So you can't ever discard that. But looking at this conversation right here, that was a very, very, very that is a hell of an outlook to see it as when you think about it. One is a threat, but the other one says you're blocking me, but the other one is saying you're threatening me. How am I blocking you, but you're threatening me? I'm not even trying to block you. I just want you to leave me alone because you're threatening me. Is how I would look at it. But let's keep going.
Enemy of salvation to fire. For Christians, animism was an enemy of salvation. For animists, Christianity was a threat to ancestral memory. This quote captures the heart of the conflict. Christianity offered eternal life, but demanded spiritual amnesia. Animism offered presence, connection, and a life lived in harmony with spirit, but at the cost of being labeled primitive, damned, or deceived. And in that tension, millions of people were caught trying to reconcile the faith of their fathers with the memory of their ancestors. The story of Christianity and animism is not just a religious tale, it is a human one. A story of colonization, survival, loss, and the quiet, stubborn endurance of spirit. The fire may have come, the shrines may have fallen, but the old gods, the old songs, the old ways, they never truly left. They went underground, they hid in plain sight, and they waited. When Islam arrived,
So nothing is new under the sun, in other words. So animism just sounds like just a belief in worship of nature. Obeying the laws of nature, praising and being grateful for nature. That's what it seems like to me. That's what I'm getting from all of this. I'm understanding that animism is just a belief in praising of nature. You know, like giving praises to nature, dancing for, you know, nature and, you know, the sun, the moon, the stars, the grass, the animals, the mountains, the water, the river flow, and all that stuff. You're in tune and at one with it, and knowing, you know, respecting life, having extreme gratitude towards life as you try to live harmoniously with your fellow man or humans.
in Africa and Asia, they hid in plain sight and they waited. When Islam arrived in Africa and Asia, it did so with conviction, clarity, and power. Like Christianity, it carried the belief in one God, one sacred book, and one ultimate truth. But Islam's expansion was not only theological, it was political, cultural, and civilizational. As Islamic caliphates grew across the Middle East, North Africa, and into parts of West and East Africa, they encountered people whose spiritual worldview had little in common with monotheism. These were animist communities deeply connected to their land, their ancestors, and the unseen forces woven into daily life. And as with Christianity, Islam's encounter with animism was marked by tension, resistance, and transformation. In many regions, Islamic expansion was gradual and complex. It came through trade, intermarriage, and diplomacy, especially in coastal areas and along major trade routes. But with it came a religious framework that viewed animist practices as shirk. Perhaps
That's actually what we're dealing with Islam today. The radical Islamists in America, we're dealing with it right now. I don't know about trade, but diplomacy and I think they said family is how Islam slowly integrates itself inside of your civilization or country. Diplomacy, family, and trade. Interesting.
the most serious theological offense in Islam. Shirk is the act of associating partners with Allah, and in Islamic doctrine, it is seen as an unforgivable sin if not repented. Animism, which saw divinity in the rivers, trees, ancestors, and spirits, was, from an orthodox Islamic perspective, a direct violation of Tawheed, the oneness of God. This spiritual conflict was not subtle, it was foundational. As Islam gained influence in Africa and Asia, traditional animist practices were increasingly outlawed or marginalized. Shrines dedicated to local spirits were destroyed or abandoned. Sacrifices, central to many indigenous ceremonies, were banned.
So this could probably describe pyramids, statues, sculptures, hieroglyphs. This could damn near describe that. And you got to get what I'm saying. This could really describe those things. Because looking at it from that perspective, it could potentially describe those things. But I digress. Let's keep going.
Drums and dances once used to invoke ancestral or nature spirits were labeled as haram, forbidden. Islamic rulers seeking to purify their territories often enacted laws that criminalized these traditions. Entire communities were pressured or forced to abandon rituals that had defined their identity for generations. One of the most striking examples of this oppression can be seen in the history of the Hausa people of northern Nigeria. Before the rise of Islam in the region, the Hausa practiced a complex spiritual system centered around the Bori cult. Bori was a spirit possession tradition that involved trance, dance, and healing. Women played prominent roles, and the Bori spirits reflected a diverse spiritual ecosystem, including elements of nature, ancestors, and everyday emotional states. But as Islam took hold in Hausa society, Bori was condemned as pagan and un-Islamic. Rulers and religious leaders actively suppressed it, pushing it underground.
Keegan really enjoys telling people.
Rulers suppressed it, so they're hell-bent on dealing with animism, whatever the situation may be. They're hell-bent on dealing with it. So first we did Christianity, now we're looking at Islam running into animism and seeing how they both basically stomped it out or buried. Well, I'm gonna say stomped it out, but like they buried it, they burned it. It seemed like they had two different approaches. Is what it so far is what it seems like. It seemed like Christianity was just like burning shit down, and it seems like the Islamic angle it seems different. I don't know. We haven't gotten too deep in the Islam way, but the Christianity version looked at it as you're blocking my salvation for me to get to my God. So therefore, they look at that as they saw this a huge threat, was burning stuff down and doing what they do. The Islamic way seems a little bit different on their approach in having to deal with animism. But nonetheless, they both have an issue with animism, although animism was before both of the two. Let's keep going with this.
Practitioners were forced to meet in secret, and many of the rituals that once occurred in public spaces were hidden behind closed doors. Despite these pressures, Bori did not disappear. It adapted, survived, and in some cases, blended with elements of Islam. This phenomenon, where animist and Islamic practices merged, is especially visible in the spread of Sufi Islam. Unlike the more rigid interpretations of the faith, Sufism embraced mysticism, the inner journey, and personal experience of the divine. In many African and Asian communities, Sufi orders became the bridge between Islam and indigenous spirituality. They introduced Islamic teachings while tolerating, sometimes even incorporating local rituals, beliefs, and sacred spaces.
Okay, so Sufism was basically a blend of Islam, but still keeping animism alive in a sense, still being able to covertly practice animism. So Sufism, I have to look into that. I got to pull it up. I'm going to read it, but interesting aspect on how he's saying that you would tie Islam and Sufism together, and it seems like a covert way of still practicing animism. That's interesting. You know what? Let me see. I have it pulled up right here. I'll read it. Sufism is a mystic body of religious practices found within Islam, which is characterized by a focus on Islamic purification, spirituality, ritualism, and asceticism. Practitioners of Sufism are related to you as Sufis, and historically typically belong to the order known as Tarqa or Tariqa, congregational formed around a grand wall or wali saint, who would be the last in chain of succession teachers, like linking back to Muhammad with the goal of undergoing, I don't know if that's even true, and the hope of reaching the spiritual station of Ihsan. The ultimate aim of Sufi is to seek the pleasure of God by endeavoring to return to the original state of purity and natural disposition known as fitra. And as a fitra is a Arabic word that means original disposition, natural constitution, or innate nature. The concept somewhat resembles natural order in philosophy, although there are considerable differences as well. Okay. All right. Interesting. Let's keep going. And it said it has ties to Muhammad, but this is way before Muhammad. But let's keep going.
Sufi saints or marabouts became spiritual leaders not just for Muslims, but for entire communities that still held on to aspects of the animist past. Sacred shrines, often said to hold the Baraka spiritual power of saints, became pilgrimage sites. Healing rituals involving herbs, chants, and ancestor invocation were practiced under the umbrella of Sufi Islam. In many places, these practices blurred the lines between what was Islamic and what was animist. Spirit healers were consulted for guidance, rituals for protection, or fertility continued, and the names of ancestors were spoken alongside the names of Allah. This blending was not always embraced by orthodox Islamic scholars or reformers. In North Africa, for instance, centuries of animist traditions, carried by Berber communities and older African cosmologies, were slowly erased under waves of Islamic reform. Mosques replaced sacred groves. Prayer replaced trance. Quranic law replaced local codes of honor and balance. In these regions, the goal was not just conversion, it was spiritual cleansing.
So they did the same thing the Christians did. They put their mosque on top of their shrines. They did the same thing. The only difference is it seems like Islam, they were able to manipulate, or say manipulate, still keep their tradition of Animism somewhat cloaked within Islam by still keeping it alive covertly within Islam. You know, they were still able to kind of like keep it going above ground instead of going underground. As far as Christianity seemed like, from what it was saying, it should just shut it down. Like, it was like, nah, I don't want that shit at all. They were kind of still able to pull it off in Islam a little bit without having too much stray. They were able to manipulate a little bit of things here and there to make it seem like a blended of the two.
The unseen world, once populated by a rich array of spirits and ancestral presences, was reduced to angels and jinn. The earth, once alive with divinity, became creation to be ruled, not relationship to be honored. Yet even in North Africa, traces remain. In Morocco, the veneration of saints continues.
I have a 134 IQ.
Good Lord. They're killing us with these ads. So it seems like Islam was a little bit more tolerant. When I say tolerant, like I said, they were able to just covertly keep it in with Islam as opposed to Christianity. It's just what it seems like. But we're going to see how long that lasts, though, because, you know, Islam don't play that, but we're going to see how long it lasts. We got to find out here in a second. Anyway, let's keep going. Here we go.
In Sudan, spirit possession ceremonies occur quietly away from the eyes of conservative authorities. Across the Sahel,
one thing is for sure, the way they dress is completely different. You know, you have to take on the garb of the other religion, which is, you know, I guess is how it goes. So their cloak is different, the way they're dressed up in their garbs.
people still leave offerings at crossroads or trees before heading into the mosque. These are not contradictions. They are remnants. They are proof that animism, though battered, refused to vanish completely. For centuries, the Islamic world has wrestled with these tensions. Some Muslims see no place for animist traditions in their faith. They view them as ignorance, superstition, or direct rebellion against Tawhid. Others, especially within Sufi and more culturally rooted interpretations, see a continuity, a deeper, older spiritual hunger that Islam was meant to satisfy, not erase. In communities where Islam have blended with indigenous ways, you'll find people who can recite Quranic verses fluently and still pour libations to their ancestors. They don't see a contradiction. They see a bridge. And that bridge, while fragile, is powerful. It speaks to the resilience of memory.
So they're able to still utilize the Quran, but keep the bridge of Animism still there. So it's like, I didn't leave you. I just had to, utilize a different existence to stay alive, to keep you alive. You know what I mean? To keep one alive, they had to covertly do the other. So they still bridged it in a sense. Interesting.
It shows how even when legal systems criminalized old ways and preachers condemned them, people found a way to remember, a way to keep the old songs alive under the new language, a way to honor the earth while facing Mecca, a way to speak to ancestors while praising Allah. Still, the official stance of many Islamic authorities remains firm. Animism is not just seen as a misunderstanding, it is framed as rebellion, a refusal to submit to the oneness of God, a clinging to spirits that distract from divine unity. And in that framing lies the depth of the conflict. Animism does not deny divinity, but it sees it everywhere. Islam insists it is one and cannot be shared. For the animist, spirit lives in the tree, the stone, the ancestor. For the Muslim,
literally Avatar. That's literally Avatar. Listen to what he said. The animists, they see, what did he say? Divinity in the tree, the stone, basically nature. That's literally like the movie Avatar. Listen again.
It is one and cannot be shared.
And I can always say you see Islamic people, they always seem angry as hell.
For the animist, spirit lives in the tree, the stone, the ancestor. For the Muslim, only Allah commands true power. And so the two worldviews remain at odds, not because they are inherently hostile, but because their cosmologies cannot be reconciled without compromise. In Islam, animism was not just error, it was rebellion against the one God. Animism is not confined to any one continent or culture. It is not a regional oddity or a pre-modern relic. It is a global spiritual memory, a pattern of belief that stretches across time and geography. Long before organized religion formalized spirituality into books, hierarchies, and commandments, animism was the shared language of the human soul. And though it may wear different names in different places, its essence remains the same. The world is alive, and we are part of that aliveness. From the mountains of Japan to the highlands of the Andes, from Celtic forests to Chinese ancestral altars, animism once formed the spiritual backbone of human civilization. But like in Africa, it would eventually face two of the most powerful forces of religious transformation in human history: Christianity and Islam. In Asia, animism remains more visible than in many other parts of the world, though even here it has been reshaped by waves of religious and political change. In Japan, Shintoism is a living example of an animist tradition that survived into the modern era. Shinto does not require belief in a single god or adherence to rigid doctrine. Instead, it honors the kami, spiritual beings or forces that dwell in natural objects, phenomena, and ancestors. Mountains, rivers, trees, even rocks can house kami. Rituals, festivals, and shrine offerings serve to maintain harmony between the human world and the kami. This is not superstition. It is a sacred logic, one that sees nature as a living partner, not a dead resource. In China, ancestor veneration has long been central.
One that sees nature as a living partner and not a dead resource. Not a dead resource. One who sees nature as a living partner and not a dead resource. That is a bar.
Resource. In China, ancestor veneration has long been central to both folk religion and philosophical traditions like Confucianism and Taoism. Families maintain ancestral altars, offer food and incense to the spirits of the departed, and believe that the dead remain active in the affairs of the living. Harmony with nature, the balance of yin and yang, and the cyclical rhythms of time reflect a profoundly animistic view of the universe. Even as Buddhism and later communism sought to suppress or replace these practices, ancestor reverence endured. It survived not because it was sanctioned, but because it was remembered, kept alive in daily rituals, seasonal festivals, and family traditions. In India, before the rise of what we now call Hinduism, Early Vedic spirituality was deeply animistic. The Vedas speak of gods in fire, Agni, wind, Vayu, water, Varuna, and dawn, Ushas. These were not distant deities but immediate presences, forces of nature worshipped through hymns and sacrifices. The sacredness of rivers like the Ganges, the personification of cows as divine beings, and the reverence for trees and mountains all point to a spiritual vision rooted in nature. Over time, Indian religion became more structured and philosophical, but the animistic threads still run deep, visible in village festivals, folk deities, and everyday rituals that predate the temples and texts. In Europe, animism once thrived in the forests and highlands, among the tribal and Celtic peoples long before Christianity swept across the continent.
So Hindu, I think it said, was it Hindu religion? They're the ones that held it down pretty tough. They're the ones that held it down pretty hard and still had animism as one of their core belief systems that was still, I guess, tied to the religious practice. So, all right, okay. So far, we're seeing it still be a part of other cultures still slightly, but it's just buried. It's not gone. You know what I mean? It's like it's still kind of like the bloodline in the Bible. You know what I mean? Like the bloodline of the Bible. You know, you had parts in the Bible where you go through the Bible and like the bloodline seemed like it's gonna go away, but it still remained. Somebody still carried the seed or still stayed alive or still had babies or whatever to carry the bloodline from Adam all the way through to the end. So it's like the same concept.
The Druids of the Celtic world held ceremonies in sacred groves, believed trees had souls, and regarded certain natural sites as doorways between the worlds. The oak, ash, and yew were not just trees. They were teachers, protectors, and elders. The solstices and equinoxes were sacred times to commune with the earth and the spirit realm. With the spread of Christianity, these traditions were labeled as pagan and violently suppressed. Sacred groves were chopped down, rituals forbidden, and the Druids themselves hunted or absorbed into the Christian priesthood. The Norse cosmology also reflected a rich animist worldview. The world tree, Yggdrasil, was the axis of the universe, its branches touching the heavens and its roots reaching the underworld. The gods themselves were bound by the laws of nature, not above them. Storms, animals, and even weapons had spirits. Runes were not just letters. They were symbols of magical power. But when Christianity came to Scandinavia, it came with force. Old temples were destroyed, idols burned, and those who clung to the old ways were either converted or killed. By the end of the first millennium,
Christianity wasn't playing around, bro. It was either convert or die. They wasn't playing with their crusades. So was the crusade mainly a conquering of animism? Animism? Is that what the crusades is all about? Conquering animism? Because that's what I'm starting to grasp from this. You know what I mean? Like it seems like the Crusades were always starting off and conquering animism, and then turning around and fighting for the conquering of land, rather than because one is living harmoniously with land while the other is fighting to conquer the land as well as the people. So was Crusades and Holy Wars all a fight against the first religion, which was animism? It was a good question.
Much of Europe's animist heritage had been buried under the weight of Christian doctrine. In the Americas, animism was the heart of life for indigenous peoples long before European contact. Native American traditions spoke of the Great Spirit, a unifying presence that lived in animals, rivers, and sky.
Dances with wolves.
Each tribe had its own stories, ceremonies, and sacred relationships with the land. Totem animals were not just symbols. They were kin, protectors, ancestors. In the Andes, the Inca revered mountain spirits known as Apus. In Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztecs honored maize as a divine being, performing elaborate rituals to maintain balance between humanity and nature. The earth was not property.
Hold up, did they just say the Mesos and Aztecs were how do you say the word? Animisms or animistic? Were they animistic too? The Mesos and Aztecs? I think that's what they said.
Ancestors. In the Andes, the Inca revered mountain spirits known as Apus. In Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztecs honored maize as a divine being, performing elaborate rituals to maintain balance between humanity and nature. The earth was not property, it was a mother.
Like apocalypto in a sense. Okay.
A being, a living reality to be honored, not conquered. But with the arrival of European colonizers came the dual forces of Christianity and empire. In both North and South America, missionaries destroyed sacred sites, burned codices, and banned indigenous rituals. Native languages were erased alongside spiritual traditions. Children were taken from families and forced into Christian boarding schools. Entire cosmologies were condemned as heresy. The conquistadors did not merely conquer land, they conquered spirit. Churches were built over temples. Priests replaced shamans. And yet, just as in Africa and Asia, the old ways survived beneath the surface. Indigenous people disguised their rituals inside Christian festivals. They whispered their prayers in native tongues. They passed stories in secret, danced in the shadows, and remembered. The story repeats itself across the globe. Wherever Christianity and Islam expanded through conquest, animism was pushed aside, labeled primitive, sinful, or demonic. This wasn't just religion.
Oh, that's crazy. So wherever Christianity or Islam went, they saying that animism was pushed aside and basically considered primitive or demonic. So it's a battle against the first religion, which was, I mean, from what it sounds like, was obeying the laws of nature. That's what I'm getting from animism so far. That's what I'm grasping from this. I'm not seeing anything else. This is wild.
Religious transformation. It was cultural erasure. The sacred trees were cut, the drums were silenced, the altars were...
The sacred trees were cut. Avatar once again. The sacred tree was blown up. Bro, this is Avatar all over again. So Avatar was basically a movie about animism. That's what I'm gaining from this. This is what it sounds like. Avatar is animism. Bro, you tell me if I'm wrong. Somebody tell me, hey, you're wrong. But it seems like Avatar, the movie, with the blue people, was about animism. And then you can even take Avatar with the Nickelodeon version with Aang, with the arrow, the cartoon. That seemed like animism as well, because all the kids had an element. One had wind, one could bend water, the other had control of the land and the rocks. They all had powers of land. Bro, this is wild. It's like they've been trying to tell us.
The sacred trees were cut, the drums were silenced, the altars were buried. But something always lingered. Memory, ritual, resistance. In every corner of the world, from the mountains of Japan to the plains of North America, from the Celtic groves to the African forests, people held on to the old songs. They carried the spirits forward in stories, in symbols, in secret. Today, those ancient ways are not extinct. They are rising. As the world faces climate collapse, spiritual alienation, and cultural fragmentation, more people are turning back to animism. Not out of nostalgia, but out of need. They are remembering that the earth is alive, that we are not alone, and that our ancestors are not gone. They are waiting. The global picture is clear. Animism was humanity's first faith. It was nearly buried beneath crosses and crescents, but it was never truly erased. It adapted, it disguised, and now it returns. Not to conquer, but to remind us of something we've always known deep down. The world is alive.
You know what? This almost makes me think that the game God of War is a game of animism. Now when I look at God of War, it just makes me think it's about animism, because everything that you're fighting is all a part of nature. You know what I mean? You fought Poseidon in the water. You fought you fought Kronos or whatever his name. You fought all these different things that had natural elements to them, but you were a god fighting these things. But it was a bunch of nature that was going on. You had a bunch of like things that you dealt with in nature, which is interesting when you look at it.
And it remembers.
Hi.
All right, I gotta give it a second. So this is interesting. This is really interesting. We're almost done with it. I'm gonna go through the whole video. Probably got like 15 minutes of this video left, so we're gonna finish this thing today. I feel like this is something that needs to be gone over, because it seems like it holds it holds a deep understanding. Because if this was allegedly the first religion before Christianity and Quran, and the religion didn't come from any scriptures, it literally came from harmonious living and respecting of nature. But then the other two religions, Islam and Christianity, came with scriptures that was written, but animism doesn't. Animism is harmonious living. That means animism, everybody could be at harmony with nature. Like nobody had to write anything down. It's just when you look around, it's like your reality is it. You know what I mean? Like your reality is everything. And everything has a pulse. Everything has a story to tell, a rhythm, a vibration, a purpose, and you respected everything. This is interesting, dude. I really like this. This is really good. But let's keep going. We're almost done. Let me turn this back up. There we go.
Suppression, erasure. Despite centuries of suppression, erasure, and demonization, animism did not vanish. It adapted. It morphed. It hid in plain sight, wearing new names and adopting new forms. But it never truly left. Beneath the surface of the world's dominant religions, especially in colonized and converted lands, animist traditions continue to live, not as broken fragments of a forgotten past, but as resilient echoes of an ancient, unbroken truth. When faced with the extinction, animism didn't fight with weapons. It fought with memory, creativity, and disguise. In regions where Christianity took root, particularly among enslaved Africans in the Americas, animism found new ways to breed. Vodou in Haiti, Santeria in Cuba, and Candomblé in Brazil are not simply mixed religions or hybrids. They are strategic spiritual acts, forms of resistance that ensured the survival of ancestral knowledge under the watchful eye of colonial power. These systems cleverly adapted to the imposed Catholic framework, associating traditional deities with Christian saints. The Orisha Ogun, god of war and iron, became St. George. Yemoja, goddess of the ocean and motherhood, was hidden beneath the image of the Virgin Mary. Legba, the gatekeeper of the spirit world, took on the face of St. Peter. To the colonial authorities and missionaries, this syncretism often looked like submission. They believed the African spirit had been conquered. But in truth, the spirits had simply changed their skin. Behind the candles and rosaries, the sacred drums still beat. The songs still carried the names of the old gods, whispered in codes and chants that outsiders could not decipher. Rituals were carried out under the cover of church festivals. Trance possessions and a divination took place in the back rooms of homes. The enslaved had lost their freedom, but they refused to lose their gods. The survival of animism wasn't limited to Christianity's domain. In Islamic territories, especially in Africa, similar patterns emerged. Sufi Islam, with its emphasis on mysticism, poetry, and inner experience, provided a subtle shelter for animist elements to endure. Across the Sahel and into parts of Sudan, spirit possession ceremonies continued under the guidance of marabouts, Sufi spiritual leaders revered for their wisdom and healing abilities. These figures often operated on the edge of Orthodox Islam, offering services that included dream interpretation, ancestral communication, herbal medicine, and protective charms. In places like Senegal, Mali, and Nigeria, ancestral spirits were not cast aside. They were folded into the spiritual fabric of the community, invoked quietly in prayers, honored in secret ceremonies.
It's because it was demonized. That's what happened. At least in Christianity, it was demonized. In Islam, it was integrated covertly, so they would still practice it underneathly, using it as a bridge to still keep it going and keep it alive, to be able to still practice animism. But then, like, if we see it today, we probably, I guess if we see it today, we look at probably like maybe the elites practice animism. No, them fuckers are just Satanists. Like, they just Satanists, bro. They on some other shit, eating. Yeah, I'm not gonna go into that. But like, if we see it today, people doing magic, talking to ancestors and stuff like that, it would be demonized from the way we see things. But in our reality, from at least from what we're learning, it's considered a first religion of the world before Quran and Christianity came in. So, and all it is just a harmonious living with nature and ancestors. That's all it is. But why would it be demonized if it offers harmonious living and it's not forced upon you? You're brought into it. Living in the world within itself, you're in it everywhere you look around. I don't know. Let's keep going.
The Bori cult, long persecuted by Islamic reformists, continued its ceremonies underground. Women would gather in secret to perform dances that invited spirits into their bodies. Healers would call on ancient forces to treat sickness, both physical and spiritual. Though the Quran was memorized in public, the old chants were never forgotten. Animism may have disappeared from the surface, but its roots ran too deep to be pulled out. In Sudan, similar stories unfold. Despite centuries of Islamic governance, traditional spirit healing practices remain embedded in everyday life. People still visit zars, ceremonies where spirit possession is used to diagnose and heal illness. These rituals combine Quranic verses, drumming, incense, and chanting, blurring the line between Islamic prayer and animist invocation. Participants do not see contradiction in this. They understand that spirit is spirit and healing is healing. The framework may have changed, but the essence remains. These blended traditions are not merely the residue of forgotten religions. They are living, breathing systems, testaments to the endurance of the human spirit and its refusal to forget. They remind us that animism didn't need temples or texts to survive. It needed only memory, community, and rhythm. It moved in secret. It danced in disguise. It whispered its songs in new languages and waited patiently for the time when it could rise again. In Haiti, practitioners of voodoo still pour libations to the ancestors.
It just hopefully it doesn't get demonized. But I don't know if this, I wonder if it could, well, yeah, you can demonize anything. And when I say demonize, I mean like turn it into a evil practice. You could do that to anything. It seems like part of this is like when you listen to it and hear it, you think about the you know, like the higher ups, the Illuminatis and all them people who do like all these crazy dances and they do their rituals and stuff on stage, and we could see all of the satanic worship and the satanic imagery. It seems like when you listen to Animism, it seems like they taken some plays out of that playbook and applied it to their satanic culture. Is what it seems like. So which I always say that you can always take something good and make it evil and vice versa. So it's almost like you can see some of this stuff being taken and utilized in a satanic way from, you know, the elites who, you know, do all sorts of fuck shit. Crazy ass people. But let's continue. We're almost done. Like less than 9 minutes.
In Brazil, dancers still invoke the Orisha with every step. In West Africa, traditional healers still read the signs of nature.
Bro missed the whole bottle, bro. You missed the whole bowl. Bowl just, you missed.
To diagnose imbalance. In the Americas, young people are reclaiming the old ways, guided by elders who never truly let them go. Even in urban cities where concrete covers the earth and noise drowns out silence, the spirits are being remembered. Rituals are returning. Names are being spoken again. The old faith never died. It simply changed its skin. This statement isn't just poetic, it's historical fact. Animism proved itself not only as the oldest spiritual system, but as one of the most adaptable. It knew how to survive persecution, adapt to foreign gods, and embed itself within the very structures meant to destroy it. It did what nature always does. It found a way. In our time, as people seek deeper connections, ancestral roots, and spiritual authenticity, the animist thread is being pulled back into the light. The disguises are being dropped. The rituals are no longer hidden. And what once survived in secret is now beginning to speak loudly again. The old faith reborn, not as a religion in competition, but as a memory returning home. Today, animism is still practiced by millions of people across the world. From rural villages in Africa to mountains in Peru, from Southeast Asian islands to First Nations communities in Canada, the old ways are alive.
So the old ways are still alive out in rural areas that still thrive and have a high impact of nature and land around them, is what they're saying. So animism is still alive and well and ticking. You just have to go out into rural areas to basically find it in certain places, is what he's saying. But then again, you know, this could be AI talk. But just take it for what it is.
Communities in Canada, the old ways are alive. Sometimes they exist as formal traditions, passed down through rituals, chants, and initiation. Other times they survive in gestures so small they almost go unnoticed. A cup of water left for ancestors, a whispered prayer to a river, a pause to honor a tree before it's cut. Yet despite this quiet endurance, mainstream society often dismisses animism as superstition, something primitive, irrational, or outdated. It's portrayed as the religion of those who haven't yet advanced, a worldview to be outgrown rather than understood. But this dismissal misses something profound. Animism was never about complexity. It was about connection. In the 21st century, animism is not only surviving, it's re-emerging, often under different names. The global rise of eco-spirituality is one of the clearest signs. As the planet faces an environmental collapse, more people are recognizing that our disconnection from the earth is not just ecological, but spiritual. Climate activism is increasingly infused with ritual, reverence, and a sense of sacred duty to the earth. Movements to protect the Amazon rainforest, defend indigenous land rights, or stop pipeline developments are led not just by scientists and politicians, but by shamans, elders, and medicine people. Their message is animist at its core. The land is alive, and it must be listened to. Modern spiritual seekers, many disillusioned by institutional religion, are also turning toward animistic concepts. Practices like grounding, moon rituals, ancestral healing, plant medicine, and even mindful hiking are rooted in ancient traditions. People are reclaiming the idea that divinity isn't locked in a book or a building. It's in the soil, the breath, the blood. And though they may not always call it animism, they are walking its path, choosing to relate rather than dominate, to listen rather than lecture, to rejoin the web rather than stand above it. Ancestor movements are also growing. Across the diaspora, especially among people of African, indigenous, and Asian descent, there's a powerful pull toward reconnection. Reconnection not just to history but to memory, to the spirits that lived before us, who still walk with us if we remember to look. DNA tests are sparking more than curiosity. They're awakening longing. People are building altars, learning old languages, studying the gods their grandparents were told to forget. This is not nostalgia. It is healing. Animism is also influencing contemporary philosophy and science in subtle but growing ways. Thinkers are challenging the long-standing Western assumption that only humans possess intelligence or agency. Concepts like panpsychism, deep ecology, and the rights of nature, where rivers and mountains are granted a legal personhood, echo ancient animist truths. These aren't radical ideas in the animist framework. They're obvious. The fact that modern society is only now catching up speaks more to our amnesia than to animism's strangeness. Christianity and Islam tried to bury animism. They declared it inferior, irrational, and incompatible with salvation. But seeds grow in the dark, and those seeds are rising again.
Okay, so then does that explain why they say that the Antichrist will try to bring amongst world peace amongst all the religions of the world? Does that explain why the Antichrist will try to bring peace, but it's not going to bring peace, it's going to bring destruction? So does that mean that the religions of the world will band together under the disguise of peace? But if, this is me saying if, what if all the religions, if the Antichrist system goes along the way they say it's going to go, or at least it's written in the Bible, then that means that the religions will band together in the form of peace. But Animism will be the one left out in the cold because it stays in tune with nature while the other ones don't. You see what I'm saying? So would it be a part of it? Well, it wouldn't be a part of it because the Antichrist system comes in with peace, with trying to bring together all nations in the name of peace. I don't know. We'll see how this plays out.
In the cracks of global empires and at the spaces between megachurches and mosques, in forests and protests and poems and prayers, animism is speaking. Not in competition, but in invitation. An invitation to remember. An invitation to return. This isn't about going backward. It's about going deeper. The global battle for spirit was never just about religion. It was about relationship. To land, to self, to each other, and to the unseen world. And in this moment of global reckoning, as systems fail and certainties dissolve, the animist way offers something rare. Rootedness, reverence, balance. A chance to remember what we were before we were told what to believe. And a path forward that doesn't ask us to dominate the world, but to rejoin it. Animism was humanity's first faith. Before temples, before scriptures, before organized religion, there was the drumbeat of the earth, the whisper of the wind, the presence of ancestors in the firelight. Animism wasn't just a belief system, it was a way of being. It taught that everything around us was alive, interconnected, sacred. And though centuries of colonization, conversion, and control tried to erase it, animism never truly disappeared. It bent, but it did not break.
Now, here's a quick question. It's got less than 2 minutes left. Here's a quick question that I have real fast before we finish this up. I'm looking here and I just asked, can religions coexist peacefully? And here's a really good answer that I got. And it says, basically, religions really can't coexist with one another because they're too busy competing with one another for the heart and souls of men. And then it says religions often struggle to coexist with each other because their exclusions claim about truth, which address fundamental questions of origin, purpose, and afterlife inherently conflict. This conflict can also stem from misapplication of religious belief rather than their core teachings. The human factors like tribalism, power dynamics, and differing theological stances. But when you look at animism, it's not fighting for the heart and souls of men. The heart and souls of men would live harmoniously within the confines of nature, whether you choose to go with nature or against it. You want to go with nature because you lose if you go against it. You know what I mean? So they're saying religions can't coexist because they're too busy competing for the heart and souls of men. However, it doesn't seem like it didn't seem like, at least from this video, it didn't seem like animism was fighting to convert or, get anybody to its religion or whatever you want to call it. It was like where your reality of nature and everything that exists around you, from like, I guess, with the food that you eat, the water that you drink, all of it plays a part of you living life and appreciating the present and the afterlife with the ancestors. You know what I mean? Like, so therefore the coexistence is like inevitable. Like, you can coexist with nature, you can fight against nature. That's your choice. We'll probably tell you not to fight against nature because that's a losing battle. You know what I mean? So it's like, it doesn't seem like a religion that would be hard to coexist with because it's harmonious in nature. Just food for thought. Let's finish this up. Last 2 minutes.
It adapted, it hid, it waited. And now it is rising again, not just in old rituals, but in new awakenings. We've seen how Christianity and Islam, in their quest for universal truth, often crushed the spiritual systems that came before them. Shrines were destroyed, names were forgotten, and sacred lands were stripped of their meaning. But the story did not end there. Animism survived in secret dances, in coded prayers, in the rhythm of resistance. And today, it speaks again, not in the language of conquest, but of reconnection. Because this battle was never just about religion. It was about memory. To forget animism is to forget the oldest wisdom of the human race, that the world is alive and we are never alone. That the wind carries messages, that the land holds memory, that the dead still walk with us, and that spirituality is not something we inherit. It is something we live every day in relationship with everything around us. If you believe the spirits never died, that they've simply been waiting for us to remember, then leave a comment and tell us.
Okay. Now he's going off the scale. So that was very interesting to learn that about another religion, man. I thought that was a hell of an interesting video, even though it took long as hell. That was damn near an hour. Jesus. Woo. Almost had me nod off a few times while I was sitting there fighting it for a minute. I was like, oh, come on, finish up. We got to get this one done. But yeah, I mean, I think that was interesting to understand, only because, like I said, I went down a rabbit hole this morning. I was just reading and researching and stuff, and it just popped up and it said, the reason why I showed you why we started this video to begin with, again, is just this right here. I thought it was interesting because it said right here about the religion with the Danish West Indies, and freedom of religion was partially granted. When the Jews began settling in the colony in 1655 and 1796, they built their first synagogue. In spite of general tolerance of faiths, many African religions were not recognized because they typically revolved around belief in animism and magic. beliefs that were consistently met with scorn and regarded as immoral and inferior. Why is yours regarded as immoral and inferior? And it was widely believed that if slaves could be converted to Christianity, they could have a better life, and effort was made to do so. Like, why would you think that your religion could give them a better religion if they were already living harmoniously with the land the way they wanted to? But you have them as slaves saying we can give you a better life. Of course you can. You have them as slaves. So then you make yourselves their God. You know, I could go all day about this. I'm just saying this is what got me going down a rabbit hole of Animism, because I didn't know or ever heard of it. But when you sit down and look at it, it seems like it's a very harmonious religion, especially when it's the first, allegedly the first religion that was before Christianity and the Quran. But I digress. That's just me, you know, just going down a nutshell, just trying to sum it up in a nutshell and going down a rabbit hole and seeing what this is, because I think this is a very interesting one. This is a very interesting show. But with that being said, man, hopefully you enjoyed the show, man. I got to get up out of here. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you learned something new today. I sure did, man. But we'll catch y'all later. Be safe over the weekend. It's Friday, so be safe over the weekend. Enjoy your last 2 days of Black History Month. I just gave you some real good Black History Month, so I don't want to hear shit from nobody. I think I did the best Black History Month video there is. Well, reacted to the best Black History Month video there is, because it seemed like it was a whole lot of melanin going on in that Animism. But I digress. But be safe over the weekend. Take care of yourself. You know what I'm saying? Be good. Don't do nothing crazy. You know what I'm saying? You know, spring break is around the corner. You know, and enjoy yourself. Take care of yourself. Love each other and all that good stuff. I will catch y'all later. I'll see y'all on Monday. We'll be back on Monday or Tuesday. So we'll catch y'all later. Take care. Love y'all and peace.
Thank you for watching D. Elliott Fitness Livestream. Goodbye.
It's big on, baby, I'm obsolete. Pockets chunky like cottage cheese. Real nigga, I just gotta be. Smoking weed that don't gotta see. Used to be a hustler prodigy. I love when people say they proud of me. I'm eating good, smoking broccoli. Taking over blocks like Monopoly. Only fuck the ones that's my policy. Most of these hoes trying to cause a scene. Like niggas mad they not on the team. See, I got bread, then bought a dream. The game's on, and I got the